Hello again. Tonight's story follows Devon, a quiet and grieving farmer whose refusal to look away from a public injustice binds him to Vara, a fiercely pragmatic orc woman wrongfully chained in the town square. What begins as a defiant rescue born of anger slowly becomes a tale of shared silences, rebuilt fences, and a profound respect that heals them both. Devon Holt came into Rookfall for grain, fence wire, salt blocks, and stove black. Devon Holt came into Rookfall for grain, fence wire, salt blocks, and stove black, the sort of things a man needed when a farm had more weather than mercy and cattle clever enough to find every weakness in a fence. The morning market was already loud when he tied his wagon behind the livery. Wheels dragged through mud, crates thumped against planks. Children cut between stalls where they should not have been, and merchants called out prices in the voices of men who believed volume made a thing truer. The air smelled of wet boards, onions, horse sweat, frying dough, old hay, and grain dust. Devon knew the place well enough to move through it without thinking. He nodded to the apple woman, passed the tobacco stand, and turned toward the grain row with his list folded in his coat pocket. He almost missed the post because everyone else was trying so hard to pretend they had. It stood near the pump, in the open, where any decent thing would have been ashamed to stand. A loose crowd had formed around it, not close enough to admit interest, not far enough to claim ignorance. Above the iron ring, a board had been nailed to the crosspiece with black letters dragged across it in a clerk's ugly hand. Free. Nobody wants her. Beneath the sign stood an orc woman chained by one wrist to the post. She was tall even for her people, broad through the shoulders, travel-worn clothes hanging dusty from a body built by years of hard work rather than display. Her skin was a deep forest green with a gray cast in the morning light. Her black hair was pulled back tight at the base of her neck. Her tusks had not been filed small for human comfort. A blade scar marked the back of her right forearm, and a burn darkened the left side of her neck above her collar. She was not crying. She was not struggling. She was not performing defiance for the crowd. She stood with the terrible stillness of someone who had decided that any motion would be taken down as evidence, so she would give them nothing. Her chained hand hung loose, denying the iron the satisfaction of being fought. Her pale amber eyes fixed on a nail across the square, as if the nail deserved more of her than the people did. A boy tossed a clod near her boot. It broke in the dust. She did not look down. The boy's mother pulled him away, embarrassed less by cruelty than by the chance of being seen enjoying it. Devon stopped. He read the sign once, then again, slower, as if the words might be— Before I continue, I'd like to make a quick announcement. I'm sharing some really steamy and completely uncensored orc stories on my Patreon page, stories I can't post on YouTube. You can find the details in the description. Just a heads up, the content there is really steamy. Become less foul if given time. They did not. The market began to notice him noticing. Cole Barris's clerk leaned under the grain awning with his arms folded and his mouth held in a line that said this had all been made proper on paper. Two drovers laughed too loudly. Someone whispered Devon's name. He felt the old cold come over him, the same cold that had come years ago when a bridge boss called an exhausted boy worthless in front of a crew, when a banker explained hunger to a widow as if it were poor bookkeeping, when people spoke around Nessa's sickbed as if dying had made her absent. Some words were made to reduce a person until the crowd could walk past. Devon had never learned to walk past them cleanly. He stepped forward. No one stopped him because people liked to wait until wrong had a shape before deciding whether they had opposed it. He reached up, gripped the board, and tore it down. One nail snapped. The other split the wood. The market quieted by pieces, a laugh dying, a crate settling softly, a bargaining voice losing its price. Devon looked at the board in his hands, folded it once, then again, until the cheap wood cracked across the letters, and put it inside his coat. That was the part people would talk about later, because it had no performance in it. He turned to the woman and crouched, not because he thought himself beneath her, but because standing over a chained person was another kind of statement. Close, her eyes were sharper than he expected, amber, almost yellow, angry in a way held so tightly it had become useful. He kept his voice low, meant for her alone. "You're coming home with me." He heard the mistake as soon as he said it. He had meant away from this, not mine. He had meant the shortest road out of the square. She studied him long enough that the crowd began to breathe again. Then she lifted the chained wrist by an inch. Iron shifted against iron. "The chains first." He nodded. That answer told him more about her than any gratitude would have. He crossed to Barris's clerk. "Key." The clerk swallowed. "That order came from Magistrate Calloway." "Then you know where the key is." "Mr. Holt, she was lawfully censured. Suspected theft from contracted cargo. Refusal to answer. 3 days public key." The clerk looked for help and found only appetite in the faces behind Devon. "At the magistrate's office." Devon walked there without haste. Haste would let them call it temper. He knocked once, then stood before the door until Wren Calloway opened it with irritation already arranged on his soft face. "Holt, this is a court matter." "No court here." "A municipal censure was issued after credible accusation by a licensed merchant." "Unlock her." "You don't decide that." "Neither do you, from what I've seen." Calloway flushed. Devon kept his hands open at his sides. He did not need to touch the man. He only stood there and let Calloway imagine the next day, the next week, the letters that could be written, the neighbors who would hear that Rookfall chained a free woman to a market post under a merchant's complaint and called it law. Calloway disliked trouble that did not know when to move along. At last, he took a ring of keys from inside. "You assume responsibility for her conduct." "She does." Devon took the keys. Back at the post, he tried 3 before the 4th opened the cuff. The iron fell away with a reluctant click. The woman did not show relief. She rolled her wrist once, careful, examining the red band pressed into her skin, then straightened. Free, she seemed taller. The crowd stepped back by small degrees. "My coat," she said to the clerk. "My pack. My ledger." Her voice was low, rough from disuse or thirst, and exact. "Unless theft is only a charge when convenient." The clerk fetched them. She put on the dusty coat, took the pack, then held the oilskin ledger under one arm like something between a book and a weapon. Devon said, "Name?" "Vara." "Devon Holt." "I heard." He tipped his head toward the west road. "Farm's that way." "I did not agree to be kept." "Didn't ask that." Her eyes narrowed. "You said I was coming home with you." "I was wrong to say it that way." Pride did not get time to interfere. "Road's open. Your choice." He turned and walked toward the livery, because waiting to see if she followed would make a leash of his attention. For 6 steps there was no sound behind him. On the 7th, heavy, even footfalls came alongside his, not behind. Vara walked at his left, chin level, ledger held tight. No one spoke to her. That, Devon thought, was the first honest thing the town had done all morning. Vara kept Rookfall in sight until the road bent behind cottonwoods, and only then let her shoulders understand that the square was no longer watching. The human handled the reins with the quiet economy of someone who had driven more miles than he had explained. He did not ask whether she had stolen Barris's fixtures. He did not tell her she was safe, which was wise, because safe was a word people used when they wanted you to lower your guard for their convenience. The wagon struck ruts, each jolt traveling through the bruised circle around her wrist. She let pain remain information. Her oilskin ledger lay across her knees beneath both hands. She had checked the cord twice. The pages were dry. Her records were intact: cargo weights from Dunmere, axle repairs at Low Creek, feed purchases, signatures, the disputed crate of silver fixtures marked present under Aaron Barris's hand and absent 2 stops later before her watch began. Cole Barris had known she kept records. He had counted on no one caring to read an orc woman's book when a merchant's accusation stood beside it. In most towns, the arithmetic would have favored him. She looked at Devon Holt's hands. Large, scarred, one thumb bent from an old brake, loose on the reins. Those hands had torn down the sign and then folded it. Anger tore. Performance held a trophy up for witnesses. Contempt threw it away. He had folded the insult smaller and put it in his coat as if he did not own the right to destroy it. She did not have a place for that motive yet. "How far?" she asked. 7 miles. "You live alone?" "Yes." He guided the mule around a washed place in the road. "Spare room. Door closes, window opens, locks on the inside." That answered 3 questions she had not asked. She looked at him longer. He did not look pleased with himself for anticipating them. He only looked like a man who thought doors should close from the side of the person sleeping behind them. "You often collect strangers from market posts?" "No." "I am honored by the novelty." His mouth moved under the silvered beard, not quite a smile. "Wouldn't call it that." "What would you call it?" He considered. "Leaving town?" Vara looked forward again. The land opened into grass, gullies, fence lines, and cattle dark against the distance. It was neither beautiful nor barren. It was worked. She saw repaired gates, a wind-bent oak left standing for shade, drainage cuts, a barn roof patched in 2 colors of tin. The farm appeared gradually and without vanity. House, barn, woodpile, windmill, a yard shaped by use. Devon stopped by the kitchen door. The mule, Mercy, laid her ears back as if hospitality offended her. "She tried to bite me," Vara said after stepping down. "Means she likes you." "Then we understand each other." Inside the kitchen was warm without being close. A scarred table stood near the window, the stove sat broad and black against one wall, and 4 hooks lined the wall by the door. One held Devon's coat, one a hat, one a rope. The 4th was empty in a way that had weight, a clean absence surrounded by darker wood. Vara saw it and looked away. Absences were private unless someone made them otherwise. The spare room had a narrow bed, a washstand, curtains faded by sun, a trunk and a small shelf with 2 books and a chipped blue cup full of buttons. "It was my daughter's," Devon said. "She's in the capital now." "Does she know you give her room to accused thieves?" "Not yet." She set her pack on the trunk and her ledger on the bed. "I need ink and paper." He nodded. No why, no first eat, no questions shaped like favors. Kitchen drawer. When he left, she tested the window. It opened. The lock was on the inside. She moved the chair 2 inches so its leg would scrape if the door opened while she slept, then sat on the bed and unwrapped her ledger. Her handwriting looked back in narrow, disciplined lines. A ledger was not justice. It was only a trail justice could choose to follow if it wanted. She would make the trail difficult to ignore. In the kitchen, Devon set ink, paper, water, bread, and later stew beside her while she wrote her complaint to the Territorial Trade Commission. She ate without appearing hungry and wrote like a surveyor setting stakes. "I did not steal Barris's fixtures," she said at last, because the statement needed to exist in this house if she did. "Figured." "On what evidence?" "You asked for ink before food." That proves I am hungry and literate. Proves you kept something worth writing. She disliked the small loosening in her chest and filed it under caution. That night, while she sat behind an unbarred door with the chair angled near it, Devon took the folded sign from his coat. The words had broken across the folds into pieces. Free. Nobody. Wants. Her. He nearly put it in the stove. Then he stopped. The sign had been aimed at her, not him. Burning it would give him a clean feeling about something done to someone else. He set it on the high shelf behind the flour tin where he would not forget and no guest would see. By the second morning, Vara was working because idleness made her skin feel borrowed. Devon found her in the yard with Mercy's halter in one hand and an expression of mutual distrust passing between woman and mule. He showed her the feed, the trough needing patching, the gate that dragged, and the way the yard softened after rain. She chose the gate and had it off its hinges before breakfast had settled. She asked for a longer pry bar, set stone under the sagging post, and then stood with mud on her boots studying the barn roof, the ruts, and the low place east of the house. Your drainage is wrong. Devon looked where she looked. Known that 2 seasons. Why leave it? One man, other fires. She accepted that as accounting, not excuse. Water from the north roof cuts under the yard and softens the gatepost. Dig a shallow run there, stone it, carry it east to the sedge. The grass wants water. Give it what it wants before it steals what you need. He studied the line she marked with her boot and saw the answer he had stepped over for 2 years. After the gate, he said. Before the next rain, she answered. They fixed the gate and dug the run. She worked hard without making the work a declaration. She lifted what she could, accepted help when sense required it, and learned new tasks with the speed of someone accustomed to being underestimated and paid late. When the rain came 3 days later, water ran exactly where she had said it would. Devon stood under the barn awning watching it move east. Vara stood beside him, arms folded. Huh, he said. Try not to be overcome by my sorcery. No magic. Exactly. Terrifying. He looked at the firm post, then at her. Good work. She accepted the words with a small tilt of her head, as if filing delivery confirmation. From then on, he gave her harder work, not as test, but as respect. She learned the cattle, though she named none aloud. Privately, the old dun cow who blocked gates became magistrate. The red heifer with clever eyes became ledger, and Mercy remained Mercy, because no darker humor could improve upon the existing lie. Devon noticed the way her gaze went to the red heifer first at count, and did not mention it. Some things deserved to exist uncollected. Their quiet was not yet ease. It was negotiated, which was better than false comfort. She was polite in the way a knife was clean, useful, controlled, not warm by accident. He was difficult to read because he gave few words and made those few match his actions. Vara trusted evidence. She began accumulating it. He set tools where she would find them without asking. He did not enter her room. He asked her opinion on pasture drainage and used it. He did not praise her for strength as if strength were a public object. He did not touch her, did not crowd her, did not ask for the story while she was still living inside it. One evening she said, I will pay for the room when Barris pays what he owes me. No room charge. I don't take charity. Didn't offer charity. Then what is it? He tied off a harness strap at the table. A room. Everything is negotiation. Devon looked at her. Not everything. Her face closed around whatever moved behind it. Evidence pending. The first complaint came 4 days later, folded in cream paper with Wren Calloway's seal pressed too hard in red wax. Devon found it under a stone on the porch rail. Unlawful sheltering. public nuisance. Requirement to present the censured transient for review. Barris's name did not appear, which meant his pressure did. Devon read the document once, folded it, and put it in the drawer with tax notices and spare hinges. He did not tell Vara immediately because a bad answer given quickly could corner a person as surely as a locked door. She knew, anyway. She had seen Calloway's deputy linger at the property line. At supper, she held out her hand. "Show me." He did. She read the complaint twice. "I should go." It was not a plea, it was the practical solution. The North Road would take her toward her sister's settlement, where contracts were written, and Winter, at least, admitted it wanted to kill you. Leaving would cost her wages and her corrected name, but it would make her a moving target again. Devon placed the paper flat between them. "You should stay." "Why?" "Because leaving is what they filed for." "That is spite wearing boots." "Spite can walk in the right direction." "If they revoke your permits?" "They can try." "Men with paper do more than try." "So do I." He said it without flourish, which made it harder to dismiss. She studied him across the scarred table. He did not promise safety. He did not claim they would not dare. He gave her no bright lie to reject. "If I stay, I decide how my complaint is made." "Yes." "I keep my ledger." "Yes." "I am not your statement to the town." "No." Her hand tightened around the complaint. "Very well. I will stay until the road north becomes more useful than the ground under my feet." Devon nodded. "Fair." That night, staying cost her more than she had expected. She lay in Lena's old bed with the window open 2 fingers and the chair angled by the door, listening to the house and the cattle and the coyotes beyond the dark. Movement had saved her before. Now she had chosen stillness. Chosen, she reminded herself. That mattered, even if it did not make her less afraid. The days after that did not soften so much as find a rhythm sharp enough to be trusted. Vara rose before Devon twice and after him once, then adjusted to the hour by evidence rather than courtesy. He woke when the stove needed coaxing and when the cattle began their low muttering, which was earlier than any reasonable body would choose. She woke when the house was still dark because caravans trained sleep to break before danger had to knock. On the 4th morning, they reached the kitchen at the same time, he from his room and she from hers, both stopping like people meeting at a narrow bridge. Devon stepped aside without making a performance of giving way. Vara passed without thanking him and then, after a moment, put another split log in the stove because the fire had dropped low. That became the shape of much between them. No ceremony, no explanation, the useful act left behind for the other to find. She learned where he kept nails sorted by length in old tobacco tins, where the good rope hung, which axe handle had a crack and should not be trusted, which barn floorboard complained under weight and which only pretended to. He learned that she counted tools after a job because tools had been blamed on her before, that she kept her ledger wrapped even indoors when a stranger rode in, that she disliked being approached from the right because the old blade scar across her forearm had come from a man she had not seen soon enough. He changed where he stood without telling her why. She noticed and disliked how much she noticed. Once, while they repaired the hayloft seam, a neighbor named Orrin Pike rode up with a sack of seed he claimed Devon had ordered, though Devon had ordered nothing from him in 2 years. Pike's eyes went to Vara first and stayed there too long. Devon came down the ladder, took the sack, and said, "Wrong farm." Pike laughed, as if that might make the errand innocent. "Heard you had company." Vara stood above them with a hammer in one hand, still as weather, waiting to choose direction. Devon set the sack back across Pike's saddle. "You heard wrong." Pike's smile thinned. "She's not Company? She's working. For wages? For herself. Devon's voice did not harden, which made it more difficult for Pike to claim offense. Road's behind you. Pike looked at Vara again, then at Devon, then decided seed delivery had become less interesting than survival. When he rode away, Vara climbed down from the loft. That was not necessary. He brought seed I didn't buy. You know what I mean.
So did he.
She put the hammer back in the tool loop. You made no statement. Didn't need one. That is a statement. He considered this, then nodded as if accepting a correction in a ledger. All right. The exchange troubled her more than Pike had. An insult could be filed cleanly. A defense that refused to admire itself had no obvious place. That evening she wrote an added note to her commission packet listing Rookfall's public censure, Calloway's pressure, and the way informal threats traveled before formal papers. Devon sharpened a draw knife across the table and did not interrupt. When she asked for the exact date he had received the complaint, he gave it. When she asked whether Orrin Pike had business ties to Barris, he said Pike owed Barris for feed after last winter. She wrote that down too. You keep records now? He asked. I kept them before. More, then. More people keep proving why. He could not argue with that. Later, as she carried the finished page to her room, she paused by the empty hook. It held nothing, as it had held nothing every time she passed it. Absence could become furniture if no one moved it. She wondered whether Devon saw it each time, or whether grief became like a scar on a working hand, always present but only noticed when cold found it. The thought irritated her because it was too close to tenderness. She went to bed and moved the chair 2 inches from the door, not because she expected him, but because caution was a language her body still spoke fluently. Devon wrote to Lena in the capital for a trade commission address, not saying everything and therefore saying enough for a daughter who knew him. Her reply came on blue paper 10 days later. Send the packet to Senior Clerk Ivan Sorrell, Merchant Conduct Division. Include contracts, manifests, route, witness names, withheld pay evidence, and any proof that Calloway acted before a formal county charge. If this concerns Cole Barris, say so plainly. Everyone here knows his invoices smell perfumed to cover rot. Vara read the letter 3 times. Your daughter is direct. Gets that from her mother. Not you? Mine's a smaller affliction. They copied the ledger pages in Eastmere at a clerk's shop, where a severe woman with spectacles examined Vara's hand and said, Better records than most merchants. Vara asked if she could have that in writing. The clerk said 2 cents extra. Worth it, Vara answered. They sent the packet, her formal complaint, cargo copies, Barris's contract, the page with Aaron Barris assuming inventory at Low Creek, and Devon's witness statement about the sign, the chain, and Calloway's release under demand. Vara's complaint did not plead. It named, dated, attached, and signed. While they waited, Calloway filed again, this time trying to have her removed for vagrancy and improper lodging. Devon took her to Tal Maris, a land lawyer in Eastmere with iron-gray hair, ink on 3 fingers, and no patience for procedure used as a cudgel. Tal read the filing and made a sound like a crow judging meat. Congratulations, she told Vara. You have frightened them into adjectives. Vara folded her arms. Do adjectives hold weight? Only when dropped on weak boards. Tal filed a response with the county marshal and copied the commission so retaliation would sit in the same folder as Barris's false accusation. Then she went through Vara's ledger, line by line, not with pity, but with appetite. She found the hinge, Aaron Barris's signature accepting full inventory at Low Creek, a stable entry showing him taking a horse east during the axle repair, a feed mark at St. Oro, and a toll notation signed E. Barris on the return. Merchants believe they control paper until paper breeds elsewhere, Tal said. Vara looked at her with respect she did not bother to soften. You are unpleasant. Professionally. Devon paid Tal's retainer from money meant for roofing tin. Vara objected at once. This is my claim. And my property they're dragging into it. That is legal embroidery. Tal counted the coins. Strong enough embroidery to bill against. On the ride home, Vara stared at the road until anger found words. You cannot stand under every falling object. Wasn't planning every. This is not nothing. Know that. Then why make it sound like mending a hinge? Devon eased Mercy around a washout. Hinges matter. She turned away, but not before he saw the old fatigue anger had been guarding. I have had men help me before. It is never free. No. No? No, you've had men invest. He kept his eyes on the road. This isn't that. Evidence pending, she said, but softly now. The sign came back on a night of steady rain. Vara was rewriting a route timeline when Devon placed the folded board beside her papers. For a breath, she did not understand. Then the broken words rose from the wood. Free. Nobody wants her. Her hand closed on the pen until the nib blotched the page. You kept it? Yes. Why? He sat because standing would have been wrong. Because you should be the one to decide what happens to it. Anger came first. At the market, Barris, Calloway, Devon for keeping it, herself for being struck by why. Beneath it came the knowledge that he had not taken even destruction from her. She lifted the board. It smelled of nothing, yet the market returned. Wet planks, grain, clods, public breath, the nail she had stared at to keep from giving anyone her face. She opened the stove and fed the board into the fire. The word nobody blackened, curled, vanished. She shut the stove door. Neither of them spoke. The rain pressed at the windows. She looked at the ink blot. I need to rewrite this page. Devon set a clean sheet beside her. His hand passed near hers, not touching, near enough for the heat and ash to make nearness feel like an event. There, he said. The cold weeks came in pieces. Frost silvered the yard before dawn. The pump handle bit hands through gloves, and Mercy developed a hatred for ice that looked much like her opinion of all creation. Commission notices arrived slowly. Received, assigned for review, copies requested. Tal sent sharper letters. Lena wrote postscripts to Vara, though they had never met. One saying, Father says you keep better records than merchants. This is not praise from him. This is a formal measurement. Vara folded that behind the commission notice in her ledger. Devon saw and said nothing. The farm kept taking days from them with both hands. He began setting her coffee on the table before she came in from morning chores. First, because coffee was already made, then because he knew how she took it. Strong, no sugar, a little milk only when the weather was bitter enough to make the stove sulk. She noticed on the third morning. Of course, she noticed. She stood in the doorway with frost on her shoulders and looked at the cup steaming at her place. Devon read a letter and did not look up. Poison? She asked. Milk's fresh. You hide crimes poorly. Saves time. She sat, wrapping both hands around the cup. Care often announced itself, so the debt could begin. This had no announcement. That made it difficult to refuse and harder to price. The frost night arrived with a wind that turned wrong before sunset. Devon stood in the yard tasting metal in the air and looking toward the low pasture. Ice after midnight, he said. Maybe sooner. They moved before discussion could pretend to be planning. He took canvas from the barn loft. She hitched Mercy, who objected to urgency until Vara leaned close and said, "Bite me later." They worked by lantern, rigging canvas along the windbreak, hauling hay, breaking the skin off water, and moving the weakest cattle close to shelter. Vara needed one instruction, then none. He lifted, she set. She held posts while he drove stakes. When a rope snapped across his cheek hard enough to draw blood, she caught it before it whipped again and leaned her weight until he tied it off. The old cow balked at the gate. Vara stepped in front of her, broad and still, becoming a fact the animal had to reconsider. "Move, magistrate." Devon paused. "That's the cow?" "She blocks lawful passage." The cow lowed and moved. By midnight, the last calf lay bedded in hay, shivering but safe. The barn held the heavy heat of animals, leather, manure, and survival. Vara stood opposite Devon in lantern light, mud on one cheek, hair loosened at the temples, breath hard. Blood had dried on his cheek. She stepped forward before thought stopped her. "Your face." "Had one a while." "Do not be tedious." She took a clean rag, wet it, and lifted her hand. He went still, not away. Her hand stopped an inch from his skin. Permission mattered more when no one named it. He lowered his chin. She cleaned the blood with 2 careful strokes. His beard rasped against her knuckles. It should have been a practical touch. It refused to stay in that category. "It will bruise," she said. "Likely. You should avoid being struck by ropes." "I'll write it down." Her mouth betrayed her, softer than a smile and more dangerous. He saw it and failed to look away in time. Ice ticked on the roof. A calf shifted. Vara lowered the rag. "The canvas held?" "Yes." Facts were safer. In the morning, her cup waited, and a folded cloth lay beside it. "For your wrist," Devon said. The cuff scar ached in cold. She had not mentioned it. "Visible?" "You favor it." "Annoying. Cold does that." "I meant you." He accepted the correction with a nod and went back to the stove. She wrapped the cloth under the table where he would not see the care she took. A few days later, they found Nessa's old bridle in a tack trunk, dry and cracked, too small for any horse still alive on the farm. Devon held it too long. "Nessa's mare," he said. Vara knew his dead wife only through preserved absences, the empty hook, a cup no one used. Lena's lines about "mother would have laughed," the way he looked at the herb bed as if expecting an opinion. "Oil would stop it breaking further," Vara said, "not restore it." "No." He handed her the oil rag. Together they worked the leather, not to make it useful, only to keep it from becoming less itself. Vara understood that. Maintenance was respect without language carrying too much. When they finished, Devon said, "Thank you." "For oiling leather?" "For knowing the difference." She left the barn because staying might have required an answer she did not have. The hearing never became the spectacle Barris wanted because Tal smothered spectacle under paper. It took place in a side room of the Eastmere Municipal Hall with a county clerk, a deputy marshal, Tal, Barris, Aaron Barris, Devon, Vara, and Calloway present in a chair that seemed to shrink him by the minute. The commission reviewer attended through written authority and a stack of correspondence carried by courier. Barris arrived smelling of bay rum and confidence, handsome in the way money could polish a face after character had dulled underneath. His eyes slid over Vara as if she were damaged cargo. They stopped on Devon. "Holt, you've made a simple matter expensive." "No," Devon said. "I arrived late." Tal's mouth twitched. Vara wore her cleaned coat and sat only when the clerk requested it for the record. Her ledger lay before her. The clerk read the matter. Contracted guard, missing silver fixtures, withheld wages, municipal censure, retaliatory filings. Put in order, the words sounded less like law than a machine built out of cowardice. Tal asked questions in a voice dry enough to crack paint. Had Barris filed formal theft charges with the county marshal? No. Had he paid contracted wages? No. Had Calloway held a hearing? Calloway began to answer with fog until Tal placed the marshal's letter before him and asked where, precisely, municipal authority permitted chaining a free contracted worker to a market post without county charge. Calloway found a cough and hid inside it. Aaron claimed he had stayed with the caravan at Low Creek. Tal produced the stable ledger. Aaron claimed the stable owner erred. Tal produced the feed mark at St. Oro. Aaron said many men were named Aaron. Tal produced the toll note signed E. Barris for a lone rider returning west near dusk. At that point, Barris stopped looking polished. Vara watched not for satisfaction, but for record. She wanted to remember the moment when numbers made him smaller. It came when the clerk read Aaron's own signature from the cargo manifest accepting inventory after the axle repair. The room heard the hinge. Barris turned to his nephew with family loyalty collapsing quietly in his lap. I was told, Aaron began, then stopped because every next word had teeth. Tal leaned back. By whom? No answer came. Vara answered when asked. Yes, she had reported the missing crate. Yes, payment was withheld. Yes, she had been chained in Rookfall Square. No, she was not given a formal hearing. No, she had not refused to answer. She had refused to sign a confession. When Barris's lawyer implied that Orc guards were known to miscount cargo due to illiteracy, Davin's hand shifted on the table. Only shifted. Vara placed one finger on her ledger, not touching him, reminding the room where the answer lay. Tal smiled. If you intend to challenge my client's literacy, I will request your last 3 merchant filings be compared against her ledger for mathematical accuracy. Consider the spiritual consequences. Even the clerk smiled at his paper. By afternoon, the matter had become legal, documented, and unglamorous. Barris agreed, under pressure pretending to be voluntary, to pay Vara's withheld wages plus penalty, copying costs, and Tal's filing expenses. Calloway withdrew the vagrancy petition with the air of a man removing his hand from a hot stove while denying heat existed. The commission would continue reviewing Barris's license. Aaron would speak later with the deputy marshal. No one apologized. Vara had not expected apology, but the absence still had a shape. Outside, Barris caught her near the steps while Devon spoke with Tal. You should have gone north. His voice was low enough to think itself unwitnessed. Vara looked at him. She had imagined many sentences for this moment. All felt suddenly too generous. You should have paid me. His face tightened. This won't make them want you here. There was the old tool, polished smaller for private use. It struck less deeply than he intended, and she understood with surprise that the sign had burned in more than one place. I am not a crate in your inventory, she said. Want does not determine my location. Devon appeared at the foot of the steps. Barris stepped back because he understood witnesses better than morals. On the ride home, Vara held Tal's receipt inside her ledger. The amount was exact. 3 weeks guard pay, hazard supplement, withheld amount penalty, costs. Money did not cleanse the square. It did not make the crowd innocent. But it had weight. It proved work had existed, contract had existed, debt had existed, and the debt had moved in the correct direction. I thought I would feel more, she said. You might later. And if I don't? Then you don't. She almost laughed. Your wisdom is aggressively plain. Save storage. 2 days later, the payment arrived through Tal. Vara counted it twice, paid Devon back with interest, despite his dislike of it, and placed the remaining money in a canvas purse inside her pack. It was the first money she had earned in that territory that had not been taken, reduced, delayed beyond use, or turned into leverage. The commission notice listed her as complainant, not accused. She touched the word once, then closed the ledger. After the decision, no trumpet sounded and no town assembled to confess. Rookfall continued selling onions, grain, lies, and frying dough. Ordinary cruelty did not stop because one file had been corrected in one office. Still, for several mornings, Vara woke expecting pursuit and found only chores. Peace felt like a missed signal. She sharpened tools that did not need sharpening, counted feed twice, and walked the boundaries because walking kept thought from souring in place. Devon let her move. He did not tell her it was over. It was not over. It had changed tense. On the 4th day, a letter reached her from her sister Mara in the north, forwarded through freight offices after months of chasing roads. "Come when you can," Mara wrote. "We have room if you do not mind children, dogs, snow, and my husband's belief that every broken shelf can be solved with optimism. Work is steady for guards who keep books. Winter is rude, but honest. I would like to see your face before we are old enough to forgive each other for everything." Vara read it at the pasture fence with wind pulling at the paper. She had not seen Mara in 8 years, not since their clan territory was absorbed into a border grant and families scattered by maps redrawn in ink. The North Road offered family, written contracts, honest, cold. For 3 days, she said nothing. Devon did not ask. He saw the letter because he saw most things that changed the way a person stood, but asking would put his curiosity like a stone in her decision. Instead, he ordered posts from Eastmere and marked the south pasture line on scrap paper. "Your angle is wrong," Vara said. He handed her the pencil. She corrected it. "You measured?" "Last week." "Why?" "It was wrong last week, too." He looked at her numbers: distance from oak to wash, post count, brace depth, wire length. "You cut posts?" 16. "Need 20. "I know. 4 more if you stop distracting me with legal collapse." She heard the future in the sentence after she said it. He did not seize it. That was mercy, or strategy, and with Devon, the difference mattered less all the time. The coat hook happened on a morning of mud and pale sun. Vara came in after pulling a calf from a ditch it had entered with confidence and left with the dignity of wet laundry. Her work coat was soaked and heavy. She stripped it off and hung it on the empty hook by the door because her hands were already reaching for the basin and the motion made sense. 2 steps later, understanding entered like a blade laid carefully between ribs. The empty hook. Nessa's absence. 6 years, Lena had once written, and father still leaves mother's peg open, as if weather might bring her in. Vara stood with wet hands over the basin and looked back. Her coat hung there, mud dripping into the tray below. It looked wrong. It looked settled. She could remove it, but removing it would announce she had noticed. Leaving it presumed too much. Both choices had teeth. She washed her hands slowly. The coat remained. That evening, Devon came in at dusk, carrying a small axe and a coil of rope. He stopped 1 step inside. Vara, at the stove, did not turn. She heard the stop. She heard him understand. The silence lasted long enough to break something. Then Devon removed his own coat, shifted his hat from another peg and hung his coat there, leaving hers where it was. "Calf's out again," he said. "Ledger or the spotted one?" "Spotted. Ledger is too intelligent for ditches. She's got other flaws. We all specialize." He washed at the basin. Her coat stayed. In the morning, she expected shame and found hunger. She put the coat on and went to cut the last 4 posts. 2 days later, without deciding to make a habit, she hung it there again. The hook stopped looking empty. She wrote to Mara at the kitchen table while Devon repaired a harness strap. I received your letter. I intend to come north, but not immediately. There is work here that is not finished. The contracts are poor, the law unreliable, the mud ambitious. The cattle are foolish in specific ways. I am well enough. She paused, then added, I have a room with a door that closes from the inside. After another pause, there is coffee in the morning. She sanded the page before she could reconsider. The south pasture fence took 3 days of work and one argument about brace depth that Vara won when the earth itself collapsed where Devon said it would hold. They moved the line upslope from the mud-thirsty low ground and drove posts until the rhythm entered their bones. Devon handled the maul until his shoulder stiffened. Vara took it without asking. He let her without pretending he had meant to stop. This clean transfer of necessity unsettled her more than kindness did. Work saw what needed doing and moved through whichever hands were best placed. On the 3rd evening, they stretched the last run of wire under a purple sky. The wire hummed through her gloves. It will hold, Devon said. Vara sighted down the line. Until cattle remember they are criminals. Give them a day. She released the stretcher. Beyond the fence, pasture rolled toward the creek, ready for rain it might finally survive. You told Mara? He asked, coiling excess wire. She looked at him. I wrote. Good. You do not know what I wrote. Still good. She could have said it there, with mud on her boots and rain waiting. Instead, she carried the words back to the house because some decisions deserved tables, coffee, and ordinary things. The next morning, she found Devon before sunrise with one hand around his cup and Lena's latest letter near his elbow. Her own cup stood at her place. The stove had not warmed the far corners. Her coat hung on the hook. The sign was Ash Weeks Gone, carried from stove to compost to soil because everything became work if given time. Vara sat. I am not going north yet. Devon looked up. His face did not change in any large way, which was good. Large change would have asked her to manage it. Still, something behind his eyes recalibrated, small as a gate settling into a latch. All right. Mara knows. All right. This is not because of Barris, or Calloway, or fear of the road. Didn't think so. You thought something. Mostly that the south fence needs checking before the rains. The answer annoyed her. It also loosened a knot she had not admitted tying. I know. I already measured the posts. He looked at her for a long moment, longer than courtesy, shorter than demand. Of course you did. Then he went back to his coffee. The decision entered the room not as a declaration, but as a tool placed where both could reach it. Days lengthened. Tal wrote that the commission had corrected the public record and Barris's license remained under review. Lena sent buttons for the blue cup in the spare room, though no one had asked. Vara put them in the cup and left it on the shelf. Mara answered with a letter beginning, You are impossible, and ending, Send roof measurements if it leaks. My husband needs evidence that optimism is not carpentry. Vara laughed aloud, startling Mercy outside the kitchen window into a fence. The farm did not become easy. There were mornings when the market square still rose in her throat, and evenings when Devon went quiet near Nessa's herb bed, and Vara knew not to turn intrusion into company. Some townspeople stared when they rode in for grain. One man near the pump started to say something and stopped when Devon looked at him. But Vara bought nails with her own money, signed the receipt in a hand clear enough for anyone to read, and did not reward late manners when the clerk managed, Thank you, ma'am. Passing the square, she saw the post still standing. No sign hung from it. She did not slow. Devon did not either. That evening, rain came hard and silver across the yard, running through the drainage lines she had cut and east into sedge that drank greedily. The south pasture fence held. Ledger tested it once, found no weakness, and gave Vara a look of professional disappointment. "I respect her standards," Vara said from the porch. "She's a menace," Devon said. "Both can be true." Inside, the kitchen took them in with lamplight and stove heat. Vara changed from wet boots to dry socks, hung her coat on the hook, and opened her ledger at the table. The book no longer held only past cargo and wrongs recorded against denial. New entries had begun to claim space. Stone hauled for east drainage. Frost night canvas held. Calf pulled from ditch, twice. Payment received from Barris through Talmaris. South pasture fence reset before rains. She hesitated, then added, "Coffee set out each morning." It had no weight, invoice, or delivery mark. Still, it belonged to the record. Evidence took many forms, and she trusted what repeated. Across the room, Devon stood at the window watching weather the way he had watched it from that glass for 20 years, as if rain were a language that spoke slowly and never lied. His reflection held in the dark pane, silver hair, broad shoulders, quiet hands at rest. Behind him, the hook carried her coat without asking what name to give the fact. The sign was gone to ash. Outside, beyond the rain, the south pasture fence stood measured and ready, its posts cut by her hands, its line set by their argument, its wire holding in the dark. No one declared the house changed. No one needed to. The silence inside it had altered grain by grain until it was no longer the silence of one person enduring rooms, nor yet the settled silence of two people who had agreed on what they were becoming. It was the silence between a question and an answer neither of them had chosen to hurry. Warm with stove heat, marked by ink, weather, work, and a coat drying by the door.